Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Smash JT. It's been a long time since I did a budget gamer episode, and I've had a ton of people
Excuse me.
Get the hell out of here.
Who are you?
I'm you with a more applicable shirt for this episode. Scram.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, guys. Alright, where were we? Oh yeah, we're doing a budget gamer episode for the top 10 NES games under $10. Part 2. If you guys haven't watched the first episode that I made of this, I'll put it right there. As far as this episode though, I'm doing 10 more games for under $10 on the NES. In no particular order, these are all incredible games, and quite honestly, while I was doing the research, I couldn't believe that they're all $10 or less on eBay right now. The first one I want to talk about is Batman. If you haven't played Batman, it's similar to the physics of Ninja Gaiden, where Ryu would be wall jumping from wall to wall. But in addition to all that, you'd have 3 throwing projectiles, the Batarang, the Dirk, the Bat Spear Gun. A number of the DC comic villains appear as enemies in this game, including Deadshot, KG Beast, Maxi Zeus, Heatwave, Shakedown, and Night Slayer. The game does an excellent job of representing the comics and the movies, and it's a ton of fun to play. For $10, you can't go wrong. The next one I want to talk about is 8 Eyes. If you haven't played 8 Eyes, it's similar to a more well-known game like Castlevania, except it's a lot harder. And by a lot harder, I mean it's on my top 10 hardest NES games of all time list. If you haven't seen that, definitely check it out. There are some really good classic games on that list that are extremely challenging still. 8 Eyes consists of 8 levels, each set in the castle of one of the dukes. At the completion of each level, Orin, the hero, receives a new sword. The player can choose to play each of the first 7 castles in any order, though the boss at the end of each is vulnerable to only one sword, similar to Mega Man. And there are hints throughout the game to find out which end bosses are vulnerable to which swords, but it's extremely convoluted, and now with the internet, it's a little bit easier to figure it out with some hint guides. But even with all that information in your hands right now, the game is still extremely challenging, but for $8 to $10, you really can't beat it. The next game I want to talk about is one of my favorite NES games ever made, and I can't believe it's only like $8 on eBay right now. Rygar, the NES port from the arcade. And this is one of those ports that I actually like better than the actual arcade game. The arcade version is more of a standard side-scrolling action title, while the NES game is more of an open-ended action-adventure game like Metroid almost. At the beginning of the game, you have access to some worlds, but as the game progresses, new areas open up and you find items such as a grappling hook, a crossbow, a wind pulley, and those items help you cross previously impassable obstacles. And in a way, it's kind of like an open-world game, and it's a ton of fun, but also extremely challenging. Up next, we got Dr. Mario for $8. And everyone's pretty much familiar with Dr. Mario. I don't really need to say too much about this, but I wanted to include it in this video because if you're starting an NES collection, or if you have an NES collection and don't have this game in it yet, highly recommend picking it up. It's only $8 on eBay right now, and it's one of those games that's such a classic puzzler that I feel like it's something you have to have in your collection if you want to have a quality NES game collection. Up next is Carnivore. For about $9 on eBay, you can get this one. And Carnivore, while extremely challenging, not as challenging as the arcade itself. In this game, it allowed you to get hit twice instead of once before dying. And there's a bunch of other changes that make it a little bit easier than the actual arcade version. But this game is so much fun in its own right that it definitely deserves a spot on these 10 must-own under $10 games for the NES. Next up, I got the original Bionic Commando for $9 on eBay. This is one of those side-scrolling platformer games that completely redesigns what it meant to even play a side-scroller. You couldn't jump. It was a side-scrolling game that you couldn't jump. Just try to let that sink in for a second. In this game, you basically have a grappling hook for an arm and you connect it to ceilings and swing across them to get to places. And you have to rethink how you play a platforming game when playing this, or else you're not going to get anywhere. It's not the hardest game in the world, it's more just learning the controls that gives you a challenge, but once you get the controls down, it's a ton of fun. And honestly, for $9 on eBay, you really can't say no to this one either. Next up on the list is Little Nemo the Dream Master. This is another one of my favorite NES games ever made, and a true hidden gem for those who have not heard of this one. Basically, You play as little Nemo, and you go around these side-scrolling platformer levels. The levels are huge. And you find these animals, you feed them candy, and then you jump into the animals and turn into them to be able to use their powers. It was actually really ahead of its time for what you did in it, and it was a ton of fun to play. For $10 on eBay right now, you really can't say no to this one. It's a true classic hidden gem. Now the next one's going to be a little bit of an odd duck in this group. It's not nearly as popular as a bunch of the other games I've been talking about, but I love this game and it totally deserves a spot on this list as well. For $9 on eBay, you can get City Connection, and for what it is an extremely basic game and very repetitive, and I know I'm not really selling this very well to people, but it's so much fun what you do. You're driving this car around and you need to fill up the ground and color all the spots without getting hit by oncoming traffic or random cats that are holding balloons and other crazy things that are getting thrown at you the whole time. Another one of those really challenging NES games, but it's a ton of fun and I really love City Connection. It's also a really fun game to play with your friends to see who can get a high score in it as well. And finally, number 10 on the list of 10 great NES games for under $10, we have Smash TV on Smash JT. Smash TV is one of those incredible games that was awesome in the arcade, and they brought it home to the NES, and it was still a ton of fun on the NES. When Smash TV was ported to the consoles, for some consoles like the NES, players could use the option of the directional pad on the second controller to control the direction the character would shoot on screen. Meaning you'd hold the controllers like the Wii joysticks, one in one hand and one in the other, while you were playing the game single player. And if you wanted to play this game multiplayer and do that, you'd need the multi-tap. I never knew that. That is a total game changer. I want to go try that right now. I didn't even know you could do that with this game. That's incredible. It's kind of why I love doing these videos. I learn a lot of stuff while I'm researching for them myself, and I hope you guys learned something along the way too. These are 10 incredible games that if you have an NES collection, make sure you have every single one of these in it. Money is no excuse because these are extremely inexpensive NES games that are totally worth having. Let me know in the comments section below if there are any games that you guys have that I didn't mention that are under $10, and maybe there'll be enough to do a third video on this. You should have taken care of me when you had the chance. Woo! Alright, that's all we got for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Have a good one.